Welcome everyone. For those who wish to understand the story from its very roots, make sure to watch part 1. And now, let us begin our journey into the final chapters, the fall of Al-Andalus, and the end of a glory that lasted for centuries. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Just as Al-Andalus reached the very peak of its glory, the first cracks began to appear. It's a story we've seen countless times in history. A golden age shines so brightly, it casts long, dark shadows. The seeds of weakness, once dormant, began to sprout. After the death of the great Caliph Al-Hakam II, the unity that had been the bedrock of Andalusian power started to crumble. The center could no longer hold. Hearts grew divided. Princes began to quarrel over succession and power, and personal ambitions clashed with the good of the state. Imagine a beautiful intricate mosaic suddenly shattering into 100 pieces. That's what happened to the once mighty Caliphate of Cordoba. It fractured into a collection of small, rival city-states and kingdoms. This was the beginning of the era of the Tifa kings, the party kings. Each ruler was consumed with protecting his own little piece of the pie, his own domain. They built expensive courts, sponsored the arts and sciences, and created pockets of brilliance. But they were politically and militarily weak. Their rivalry was so intense, so self-destructive, that they began making alliances that would have been unthinkable just a generation before. Some Tifa kings even allied with their former enemies, the Christian kingdoms to the north, paying them hefty tributes just to gain an advantage over a neighboring Muslim ruler. It was a short-sighted strategy, a desperate gamble that would ultimately backfire spectacularly. While the Tifa kings were busy fighting each other, the northern Christian kingdoms watched, waited, and grew stronger. Once, they had been hesitant, launching small raids, but never daring a full-scale invasion against the unified power of Cordoba. Now, seeing the discord to the south, they advanced with a newfound confidence. The Reconquista, which had been a slow, grinding process, began to pick up speed. They saw the internal division of the Tifas as a golden opportunity, playing one ruler against another, and slowly, methodically, pushing their borders southward. City after city that had once been part of the powerful caliphate started to feel the pressure. The Tifa rulers soon realized their fatal mistake. Their infighting had left them vulnerable, and they were now facing an existential threat. They were losing ground, and they were losing it fast, in a state of desperation. A delegation of Tifa kings put aside their rivalries for a moment and looked south, across the Strait of Gibraltar, to North Africa. They sent a plea for help to a new rising power. The Almoravids, a dynasty of fierce, devout warriors from the Sahara. Their leader was the legendary commander Yusuf ibn Tashfin. He was a seasoned general, a man of simple tastes, but immense military and political skill. Answering the call, he crossed the sea with his army, a formidable force ready to confront the advancing Christian armies. The two forces met in 1086 CE at the Battle of Zalaka, also known as the Battle of Sagrayasi. The Christian army, led by King Alfonso VI of Leon and Castile, was confident, perhaps overconfident, but they had underestimated Yusuf ibn Tashfin. The battle was a tactical masterpiece. Yusuf's forces, combined with the Andalusian troops, delivered a crushing defeat to the Castilians. It was a brilliant, stunning victory that sent shockwaves across the Iberian Peninsula. For a moment, it seemed like the tide had turned. The victory at Zalaka revived the spirit of Al-Andalus, giving it a much-needed breath of life. It halted the Christian advance for a generation and re-established a sense of Muslim power in the region. But this revival was temporary. Yusuf ibn Tashfin, disgusted by the decadence and disunity of the Tifa kings he had come to save, soon returned and deposed them, uniting Al-Andalus under his own rule. However, even the powerful Almoravids couldn't permanently heal the deep wounds of division. The fundamental problem of internal disunity remained. Over time, the Almoravid dynasty itself weakened, and a new power rose to challenge them from North Africa. The Almohads were another reformist movement, even more zealous than the Almohavids. They crossed into Spain, defeated the Almoravids, and once again united Muslim Iberia under a single banner. For a time, they seemed poised to restore the old glory. They lifted the banners of jihad and marched against the Christian kingdoms. Their efforts culminated in another major victory at the Battle of Al-Andalus in 1195 CE. It was a spectacular win. Another moment where it seemed Al-Andalus might just endure. But history is often a cruel pendulum. Just a few short years after the triumph at Al-Andalus came the decisive blow, the one from which Al-Andalus would never recover. The Christian kingdoms, learning from their past defeats, finally put aside their own rivalries to form a grand coalition. The Pope declared it a crusade, and knights from across Europe flocked to Spain. In 1212 CE, this massive Christian army met the Almohad forces at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa. The result was a catastrophic, absolute defeat for the Almohads. This wasn't just a battle, it was the turning point, the beginning of the end. The backbone of Muslim military power in Iberia was broken. The gates were now wide open. After that devastating battle, the fall of Al-Andalus accelerated dramatically. The great cities, centers of culture and learning for centuries, began to fall one after another like duck. The magnificent Cordoba, the former heart of the Caliphate, was captured in 1236. Imagine the shock, the despair, as the city that had been the largest and most sophisticated in Europe fell. Then Valencia fell. Then, in 1248, Seville, another jewel of Al-Andalus, was conquered after a long siege. The process was relentless. One by one, the territories that had made up the vibrant tapestry of Al-Andalus were absorbed into the expanding Christian kingdoms. By the mid-13th century, only one small bastion of Muslim rule remained. In the far south, nestled against the Sierra Nevada mountains, was the Emirate of Granada. It was the last remnant, the final echo of a once great civilization, shielded by its formidable mountain ranges. Rich with flowing water and fertile land, Granada managed to survive. It became a refuge for Muslims fleeing the conquered territories to the north. And at its heart stood one of the wonders of the medieval world, the magnificent Alhambra Palace, a breathtaking testament to the skill and artistry of its builders. Granada was ruled by the Nasrid dynasty, and through a combination of clever diplomacy, paying tribute, and its strong natural defenses, it survived for more than 250 years. It was an island of Islamic culture in a rising sea of Christian Iberia, a final, beautiful bloom before the winter. But even this last jewel could not last forever. The old sickness of internal disputes flared up again within the Nasrid royal family. Different factions vied for the throne, weakening the kingdom from within at the worst possible moment. Simultaneously, a monumental event happened in the north. The two most powerful Christian kingdoms, Castile and Aragon, were united through the marriage of Queen Isabella I and King Ferdinand II. This created a single, powerful Spanish state with a singular vision: to complete the Reconquista and end Muslim rule in Iberia once and for all. With their combined might, they launched a massive, final campaign against the small, isolated kingdom of Granada. The final war for Granada began in 1482. CE, it wasn't a single battle, but a grueling 10-year war of attrition. The Spanish monarchs systematically conquered the surrounding towns and fortresses, tightening the noose around the capital city. It was a campaign of sieges, hunger, and relentless struggle. The defenders of Granada fought bravely, but they were outnumbered, cut off, and exhausted. The years of fighting took their toll. The walls were breached, the fields were burned, and hope began to fade. Finally, the end came. In the winter of 1491, with his city starving and his armies defeated, the last ruler of Granada, Muhammad XII, known to the Spanish as Boabdil, negotiated the terms of surrender. On January 2nd, 1492, in a ceremony filled with symbolic weight, Boabdil handed over the keys to the city of Granada to Ferdinand and Isabella. The Christian banners were raised over the towers of the Alhambra. The story goes that as Boabdil and his court were leaving the city, heading into exile, they stopped at a mountain pass that offered a final view of Granada. He looked back at the city, at the Alhambra Palace shimmering in the distance, and he began to weep. It was then that his own mother Aisha is said to have spoken the words that have echoed through history. "Weep like a woman. For a kingdom you could not defend like a man." It was a harsh but poignant epitaph for a fallen dynasty, and so, After 781 years, Muslim rule in the Iberian Peninsula came to an end. It was the closing of an epic chapter of history. But did Al-Andalus truly vanish? Not at all. Its physical kingdom was gone, but its soul, its legacy, lived on. The knowledge it had preserved and created in science, in medicine, in philosophy had already flowed into Europe, helping to spark the very foundations of the Renaissance. Its stunning architecture still stands today, inspiring awe in millions. Its influence can be found in music, in language, in agriculture, and even in the food we eat. The story of Al-Andalus is not just one of rise and fall. It's a story of a light that, even after it was extinguished, left an afterglow that changed the world forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through history. If you enjoyed the series, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss our future explorations. See you next time.